Okay. A little discombobulated there getting started today. My name's Michael Markowsky. Welcome to my studio. Today we're going to recreate another painting by another one of my favorite artists. Today we're going to be looking at the art of Uno Momante. Louis Wain. And Louis Wain is one of the most unique artists in the history of art. And we're going to have a lot of time to talk about his biography, who he was, the lasting legacy which he created, which extended far beyond art, and some of the controversy surrounding whether he was actually quote-unquote insane or not, because some recent research suggests that that was not the case. So let's there's going to be two paintings perhaps which I'll attempt to do. There's that one and then this one. Now this one is super complicated and obviously symmetrical as well, and you can see, like, you're like, what? Is this the same artist? Yes, it's the same artist, and that goes into some of the discussion around his mental state at the time he made these paintings, which traditionally people have said this is evidence of schizophrenia, but again, many people today have thrown that into doubt for sure. So anyway, so this is where we're going to begin with this painting. And I want to let you know that there's outlines for both of these paintings, which I did on my iPad Pro using the Procreate app. I just traced over all the lines to make it a little bit easier for you to begin the composition so that we're working from the same image here. So to download these images, there's a Dropbox link in the video description below. When you click on that Dropbox link, you're going to see a folder with a lot of subfolders in it. And these are all the paintings that we've already done. We have been busy. If you're just joining me for the first time, you're like, wow, we've made a lot of, yeah, there's a lot of paintings here. Every great painting, as far as I'm concerned, from art history, is my attempt to try to at least touch on one artwork by one of the great masters from across generations, across time, and across cultures and genders, etc. So where are we? We are right here, number 96. And you're going to see there's 6 files in here. There's the 2 original images, and then there's 2 versions of each outline, a JPEG and a PDF. So, you know, while I've got all this up here, I want to let you know there's a private Facebook group just for people like yourself, for people to upload their artwork to the Facebook group so that they can get some feedback from myself, because once a month I go through the Facebook group, pull off all of the images, organize them, and do my best to help people improve their ability, right? That's what it's all about. That's why I'm teaching this. I'm also a teacher at a university, the Emily Carr University of Art here in Vancouver. So I would love if everyone was making art, and this is my way of trying to encourage that. We're going to talk about who Louis Wain was in a moment, but let's sort of, I want to show you how to transfer that image that I mentioned moments ago. So I'm going to play a quick clip here to show, and I'll talk over it while it's happening. So basically, you download the original, the outline from the Dropbox here. I just want to show, you know, I'm working on a 9x12 sized canvas. I also take these canvases, I order them from Amazon, and there's a link to get the exact one that I'm using. And then I open them out of the plastic, and then I put a coat of white gesso on them again. They come pre-gesso, but I gesso them again, and then I let them dry overnight, and then sand them with a 220 grit sandpaper just to make them extra smooth, because that's the way that I like to paint on my paintings. I want a nice smooth surface, and when we're doing a painting like we're going to do today, the smoother the surface, the better. Just because it's the more texture, the more complicated the process can be. It can be a little frustrating painting on coarse textured canvas, which is generally the vast majority of them. You'll see that I'm using some carbon paper, and I also threw out the first sheet there because I had used it maybe 20 times or more. So I'm gonna skip over this. You can buy your carbon paper at any art supply store. There's a link to Amazon in the description below, of course. And you can also get them at most fabric stores. And boom, look at that. We've got it all done. And let's go to the other one here. Same sort of process. We're going to put some tape on there, put some carbon paper. And for this one, you could see that I am not doing every little detail here, because that would take me a while. And as you'll see, when even though I've cut a ton of corners here, all the way to the end, that's what it looks like. And you know what, I think that's actually not bad. If I could just even do that, that's pretty good. And as I go, I can also make it more or less complicated, right? So you have the option to do with them as you will. So let's start this painting here. So where are they? They're right over here. So here's these two. I can take these templates off, and you can see there's also, it leaves marks on the other side because it's two-sided carbon paper. And let's put some paint on these canvases. And I think what I normally do is put some warm yellow on the canvas to start, and today will be no exception. This is sort of my, I guess, trademark approach to making these paintings, and it is definitely, I don't know if I've ever seen anybody else doing this, but over the years of teaching painting, let me get my water. Over the years, as I teach painting, I would originally start by mixing like a warm brown, kind of a rusty reddish color to start, and it always sort of slowed down the very start of a painting, at least in a class where people are just really excited to get going. And you know, I started to kind of get a little bit lazy, frankly, and say, let's just try this, just put this yellow on. And over the course of the past year and a half, I've realized that not only is the difference negligible, there is a difference, and I have demonstrated many times by painting a brown canvas and then seeing them side by side. There is a difference, but it is minor, and especially, you know, if you're just beginning, then you probably, it's a difference that is so small that you probably will not be too concerned about it. And I actually have kind of fallen in love with it, and I've been using this. I'm currently illustrating a comic book, a graphic novel, and I've been prepping each page of the graphic novel like this, because it's like, you know what? Hey, it works. If it's good enough for me to do in these classes, it's certainly good enough to do in my own artwork as well. So it's gone from just being a little bit of a quick, you know, solution to actually being a part of my working process as a professional artist. So I'm just wanting to kind of get a relatively smooth surface here. I certainly don't want texture. I mean, if I go to all that pain to sand down the canvas, you know, apply another layer of gesso and all that takes extra time, then I certainly don't want to have texture on the canvas at this stage, right? That would sort of defeat the purpose of everything I'm doing here. Let's do another one. This is also, I say this all the time, but this is the only time I ever use water when I'm painting with acrylic, unless I'm just washing my brushes. Because water, first of all, you use water to clean your brushes, and that should be a kind of a hint as to what water does to paint, right? It essentially breaks down the binder that's in the paint, and binder, you know, there's acrylic binders, there's oil-based binders, tempera binders, gouache binders. Basically, all paint is the same. It's all pigment. It's just the quality and type of binding mechanism. And acrylic paint is a lot like white glue, right? I mean, essentially, it's the same, just that you can have higher qualities of white glue. You can have stronger qualities of white glue, and you can have archival qualities of white glue. In fact, I just bought archival adhesive yesterday, thanks to your donation. So we'll be using that in a future painting coming up. And okay, boom, just like that. Two paintings, got our initial what we call, or the Italians called the imprimatura. We've got it established on two paintings. We'll just see these right here, side by side. And we'll let these dry. While they're drying, let's take a look at the biography of this awesome, incredible artist. And another thing I did take lens cap off another camera that is usually not seen, but will be used when I edit some of these videos together. Okay, so who was Louis Wain? I'll just let you know right off the top that there is an excellent film about Louis Wain. It's not the greatest movie ever made. I'll talk maybe throughout the episode of maybe some of my issues with it. But it stars, you know, probably an actor you're maybe very familiar with, Benedict Cumberbatch, or Benedict Cumberbatch. I think it's Benedict Cumberbatch. And whose maybe most famous role is either Sherlock Holmes or Doctor Strange in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And he plays the title role of Louis Wain. It's, you know, there's a trailer, you know, it got 75% Rotten Tomatoes, which means it's like watchable. Great movie, maybe. Yeah, we'll talk about it as we go here. So Louis Wain, born 1860, dies in 1939. So at age 78 is when he passes away. The last 30 or so years, however, he spends in an institution as he was diagnosed with schizophrenia. And as I mentioned at the beginning of the episode, there is quite a lot of debate these days as to whether or not that was, I mean, in fact, right here it says his schizophrenia diagnosis is in dispute. Many of the more recent people who've examined his life and even medical records have proposed that he was instead on the autism spectrum disorder, which makes a lot of sense if we kind of look back at his life. Our daughter is potentially also on the spectrum as well, so it's something that I've been doing a lot of reading and research about. And so looking at his work, and also having taught many students who are also autistic, that seems like a pretty, I mean, again, I'm not a doctor, but it does seem much more likely than it being him having schizophrenia. One of the main reasons why people have believed that he was not schizophrenic is that typically people with schizophrenia, as their state deteriorates, they become less and less technically capable of doing things like writing or talking, or in this case, painting. And for a long time, Louis Wain's later work, these highly patterned paintings, and we're going to look at some of them shortly here, were sort of seen as evidence of a mental state that has severely deteriorated. Because why else would anyone make a painting like this unless they were insane, right? But we know that there's plenty of artists who are very sane, who make work that is far more bizarre than this, right? So this idea that he was crazy because he made, like, here he's sane, here he's clearly crazy, that has been, that whole narrative has been thrown into question. Because to make a painting like that, you have to be very, like, as we'll see, to make a painting like the more abstract pattern paintings, you really have to be aware. Like, that is not something you can do while you're flailing about in a sort of a semi-catatonic state in your mind, and everything is not with you. Okay, so Louis Wain is born. He's the first of 6 children. He has 5 sisters, one of whom also is certified insane and committed to an asylum. And this is during the end of the 1800s. You know, the idea of what constituted sanity and insanity, those definitions have changed radically over the past 150 years or so. And people, poor people who were alcoholics, who were thieves, all those people were considered insane, right? And, often women who were suffering from postpartum depression were considered insane. Like, so, what people at that point in time considered to be worthy of throwing into a rubber room and forgetting about, many of those conditions we no longer see it that way. Anyway, so he's born, like, oddly enough, again, like, so he's born with a cleft lip, and the doctor orders him to be homeschooled until the age of 10 or so. So already he's, if he was born with autism, he's already being labeled with other conditions, and I think that would also amplify the difficulties that he would have faced later on in his life. And so once he finally does go to school, he has a great deal of difficulty fitting in, and he starts getting in trouble with the law. And but one thing that he does excel with is his art, which is not unusual for artists. There's a long history of artists who've had autism, and as we understand more about autism, we start going back and looking at history, and more people are sort of become honorary people with autism, right? Like, people think, for instance, Albert Einstein was autistic, and so on and so forth. So he studies at the West London School of Art, and after his father dies at the age of 20, he essentially becomes the main breadwinner for this family. And again, this is a time in England and throughout most of the Western world where women aren't really allowed to work besides a few small roles like nannies and governesses, which plays a role a little bit later on, because a few years later, the governess, which is someone who's kind of not really a nanny, they don't cook and clean, they don't change diapers and stuff, but really their role is like a private tutor. So the governess that was the live-in governess for their family and for his younger sisters, he becomes romantically involved with this woman and marries her, which causes a huge scandal within the community because it's sort of, like, sleeping with the help kind of thing, which is, anyway, so, but, he doesn't really particularly seem to be that concerned about other people's opinions about him anyway. He is notable for his ability to draw animals, particularly dogs, really, at first. And after he marries Emily, Emily Richardson, his wife, they find a stray cat, and she insists that they adopt the cat. And very soon after, she is diagnosed with breast cancer and only lives for another 3 years from the point they're married. And during this time, he starts making paintings of the cat to cheer her up. At first, just sort of paintings of the cat as the cat, and then increasingly anthropomorphizing the cats until they become, like we see here on the screen, like dancing and playing and singing, going to the opera, dressed up in hats and fine clothes, or standing on their hind legs, and taking on all these different human behaviors. And I think part of that was kind of just a fun thing for him to do, but that would have, it was not, it wasn't common, but it wasn't totally unusual for people to do this. There's sort of a small cottage industry of people anthropomorphizing animals throughout for a long time, centuries. But Louis Wain is probably the artist most identified with anthropomorphizing cats in particular, but animals in general, right? He's, again, there was people who did it before him, and obviously many who have done it since, but he's really the person that is most closely identified with, the most famous artist of all time to have done this. And so much so that he really is one of the things that is part of his lasting legacy is the elevation of cats into a position of some level of respect within Western culture. There are cultures where cats were seen as being gods, the Egyptians for one, but in European society, cats had sort of varied reputations from being pets, but mostly if there were pets, they were outdoor animals, or just being a nuisance, right? Just being alley cats and just like rats and other sorts of animals scurrying around the dirty streets of London. So he, by really focusing on cats, showing them in these positions where they have personalities, and the fact that they're kind of associated with humans in this by anthropomorphizing them, I think they grow in acceptance as something other than pests, and people start to appreciate them and bring them into their houses. And so that's, I think, is something that should not be lost, depending on where you fall on cats. Some people detest cats and would probably be upset at Louis Wain for his contribution into making them a more acceptable house pet. But I think anyone who owns a cat today probably owes Louis Wain some level of thanks for having made cats an acceptable animal to have in your house. Like there was a time, like, and it's shown in the movie where, you know, people laugh at the idea of something, like, because he owned a couple of cats, and people are like, oh my, gross, like, why would you have, like, that's like, what kind of like person owns a cat and lets them into their house? That's disgusting, right? So I find that really, really interesting. Anyway, let's start talking. We'll talk about later his life, but I just want to show some of his work. Here's some of, this doesn't seem to be organized in any particular way here. A lot of his work was not dated, and even though he did publish a number of books, most of the books that he published feature, you know, cats, you know, doing sort of dressed up and doing these more playful things. But some of these quote unquote more stranger artworks, the ones that are sort of used to as examples of his lack of sanity, were not exhibited, they weren't published. So it was only, you know, later on when he's actually in an asylum that doctors are seeing this work, and so they just think he's just started doing it since he got to the asylum, and therefore this is evidence of his lack of sanity. But there is lots of speculation that he was making that kind of work long before he was committed to the asylum. So, you know, we can see, you know, they're very playful. You know, he's, you know, if we think of the dogs playing poker painting, which is not by him, although he did do some similar. You know, again, we can see some of these wild paintings, and of course today's painting here. I just lost my train of thought. So let's jump right into these paintings. It looks like they're still a little bit wet, but I think I can either blow dry it or we'll just oh, I still need to get some paint on this palette here, so let's do that and then see how things go. Okay, so I'm gonna need probably a little bit of each color, and this tube is almost out, so I'm gonna use my medieval torture device here to extract the remnants from this tube. And there's still going to be more than enough to do a couple more paintings, I'm sure. If you're wondering what the colors I'm using, there's, in the video description below, there's links to all of the paint. Whether you're using this brand or not, I'm not sponsored by anybody. I don't get paid to promote anybody's brand of paint. So any paint you use, any brand of paint, you can buy these exact same colors from any of them. Now, often different brands of paint will call them something a little bit different. So they may not be named the same, but I did do a video about a year ago called Art Supply Buyer's Guide, and in that video I sort of show the various different paints from every major paint company that you can buy. Okay, so you can see there's 2 yellows, 2 blues, and 2 reds. This particular kind of palette is called a split complement. No, I always say it, a split primary palette. And a split primary palette just means that there's a warm red and a cool red, a warm yellow and a cool yellow, and a warm blue and a cool blue. And as we've seen, we can paint any painting ever made using this basic artist's palette. And there's a very small number of things that we can't do. just because some pigments just don't behave exactly the same. But hey, if you're just getting started, that is the last of and least of your concerns, being able to get so specific. So this is a great palette for any beginner artist. Okay, let's exchange that. I'm just going to clean this yellow brush. It's a bad idea to let a brush just sit there for any length of time. Otherwise the paint will dry on the paintbrush and ruin your paintbrush. Deborah says, we saw the movie and it was entertaining. Being a cat lover, we totally enjoyed it. I think he was more autistic than schizophrenic. Yeah, I agree. Oh, and there's Paula there. Okay, hello everyone. Okay, so how are we going to do this painting? You can see that this painting has a lot of warm yellow in it to begin with. So we're already prepped and ready to go for that. Now, as for how to paint this, I think what I'm going to do is put a lot of green down first. So really paint in a lot of cool greens, especially in the background, cool green with some white. We'll do a cool blue in the sky. Even though a lot of this is covered with flowers, we're going to be painting a pink on top of that, and pink has white in it, so it's going to cover up everything very easily. Yeah, so we'll do what we normally do, which is to paint our background in first and then move towards the foreground. So I just want to get this prepped. Okay. So let's get a cool green, and let's see, this is a good brush, about the little bit, half the size of my thumbnail or so, right? And this brush, or sorry, this paint is going to be, I think, primarily yellow. We'll take a bit of cool blue, mix this together, and I love this green, but it's like super electric, right? Now, if you want to have a painting that is like a candy colored painting, that would be perfect. And even though this painting is highly saturated, I think it still might be too much. So I'm going to be sort of using a few different greens here. But adding a little bit of white in this will also help keep this green a little bit further into the background. Now that's pretty, this is like your kind of spearmint gum or something. So I think I want it to be a little bit more on the yellow green side. And especially once we start painting it onto this warm yellow background, I think you'll see the impact that it has. You know, I was going to go down to a smaller brush, but you know, I think I'm going to keep this brush here just so I can kind of quickly get some of these lines in here. Let's see. We sort of got a hill here, and maybe it kind of comes back up onto the other side. So I'm going to put this kind of in the background as well. Okay. Let's take a bit more yellow. See, I'm just doing this pretty quick, right? And it's also why I'm doing this with a larger brush, because it helps me just move nice and quickly. Okay, I'm just going to take a little bit of this. So now we have mostly just like warm yellow, like very little white left in here. And I'm just going to take a bit and kind of just put a few little patches here and there. I'm not even looking at the original painting. I just want to have a bit of that color integrated elsewhere. Okay. Cool. So then, just gonna wipe that off. Let's do the same with the sky. I'm gonna take some of this white and cool blue. Oops, sorry. There's a little bit of green in that, but I think that's okay. Right, because we might have to do a second coat of this anyway. Paint on here. So I just leave like sometimes these little bits of hints as to where the tree branches are. I'll paint over top of them, and I can still see it with my pencils, but you know, it doesn't hurt to give a little bit of a window back to them so I can find them without any struggle. Okay. Cool. You know what? I'm going to take this same blue. Maybe take even a little bit of more blue. Paint it into this river. Now I look at that image and I see that this river's got a little bit more of a reddish quality. And I could put that back in there later on. I'm just gonna put that in here and maybe a hint of it coming back here. I don't know. That's good, I think. Do we want... There's a little... Actually, no, I'll that's good for right now. Let's move down. I was going to start doing some little... I see bits of purple and blue flowers back there, but you know what? Let's just... I don't want to get bogged down into details, right? So let's just keep on going. I want to get some warm red in the foreground. Or... maybe I did mix this green earlier on. You know what? I feel like what I want to create right now is a dark color. So I'm going to do that right away. So I'm going to take this cool blue and warm red. And this will, I'm creating, I guess I don't have any of that cool yellow left. which is okay, because what I wanted to do is just take this color, get a little bit of white in here, and then that way I can mix it into this green. And now it's a little bit slightly less intense color. You know what? That's too bright, or too dark, sorry. So let's just wipe it off. I'll do something a little bit different there later. But you never know unless you try, right? I wonder if there's anywhere else I can use that color at the moment. Potentially under here. So maybe I'll just put a bit of it under here. It's going to be, I think, a darker brown, but why not just, as I mixed it, I'm just going to put it in here. Typically I'd use something a little bit warmer, but I think that's okay. Okay, maybe. Sort of vignetting it a little bit there. Okay. And there's Donna joining us. She's home but still can't paint yet. Great to see you, Donna. And on your road to recovery. We're so excited to one day have you back here painting along with us again. Let's make a warm green now. So let's take this warm yellow and warm blue. Now these colors are opposite from one another on the color wheel almost. So the color they make is going to be far less, bright and a little bit more kind of brownish, kind of like a dried, like a grassy kind of green. And again, I'm just going to paint a bit over some of this in here. Okay, it's going to take more yellow. So my goal here is just to fill up this picture pretty quickly and just get the underpainting so it doesn't look all that hot right now, right? But all of this is, this is all the unseen part of the painting that most people don't see. So often, like beginner artists, when we're painting this kind of stuff, they start to freak out because they're like, oh, this is looking really bad, because they've never really seen this kind of stuff before. Let's take a bit of this and I want to put a bit of that on this. Like, I think what he did is actually painted this whole painting almost exclusively in warm colors, FYI. So I don't think he's using the warm and cool colors that I'm using here. Okay. And my brush is like very dry at this point. Happy with this so far. What should we do next? Maybe we should do the tree back here. So we could just take this green and add some warm red to it, and then we're going to get a warm brown. So we have warm red, warm yellow, and warm blue. Let's put a bit more warm yellow, just make a bigger batch of this. That one's really good, but it's kind of dark, so I'm just gonna do another one where it's a little bit lighter. So it just has a bit more warm yellow in it. Get this big tree trunk in here. Smaller brush now for some of these branches. We're just painting all of this information in, and then later we'll clean it all up. And there's going to be a bunch of flowers occupying like almost all of this. So this is sort of just the background infrastructure, I guess you could say. I can't remember where, you know, I don't think it really matters exactly where these branches are or where they go and all that kind of stuff. Let's get the bench. I think the bench, again, we'll do this with more warm yellow on here. Maybe I'm going to put a bit of white in there just to help cover up some of the stuff I painted on top. So I would probably have normally just gone in and tried to get this color, again, a little bit more closely to accurate, I guess, quote unquote. But since I accidentally painted over that all in green, I needed to kind of white it back out to get it back. And because of that, I needed to, so that it would look like it's the same material, I painted this same color that I touched that up with the rest of it, so it's now integrated better. Let's do the guitar, or yeah, the guitar here. Let's go to a little bit bigger brush. Now, I'm not sure what color we ultimately want to make this. I'm going to paint it kind of a little bit of, it's not the color I was expecting, but that's okay. Again, this first part of the painting, what the colors are and is almost not irrelevant, but you notice that, like, if I don't get the color quote unquote correct, I just keep moving forward, because there's going to be another layer of paint I put on top of it, so it's like there's no point in fussing about anything at this stage of the painting. I'm going to take this darker brown that I mixed. I'm going to paint it. I'm just going to paint all these little birds. So why don't we just jump down here and just kind of see how this progress. Now, is this the best way of doing it? No, I'm definitely painting everything kind of brown like this as a time-saving exercise here. Probably, if I was, because I wanted to see if I can get 2 paintings done. So, and I know there's a blackbird, bigger blackbird there too, so haven't forgotten about that one. So here's the foot, here's the bird that I'm painting right here, right? And I think you'll see, like, you know, this is a, you know, I am cutting a bit of a corner here, but ultimately I think the difference will be kind of negligible. I'll be able to kind of fake it out a little bit. I just don't have time to kind of treat each bird individually and mix different colors for each one. Right, I'm not even going to bother putting the legs in just yet. This dark bird there, maybe I'll just take a bit of my darker color that I had. And let's just mix a bit of that in here. While I've got some of that paint on here, let's just this is just a few birds that are a little bit darker. Might as well just do a bit of that right here. I'm going to put just the brown inside of the guitar hole. I know this is not what he did here. But the fact that the guitar and the cat are such similar colors for me is something that I want to change. So it's just too much alike. Maybe I'll see at the end that there was a wisdom that he had there for doing that. But you know, I always encourage people to take a liberty if they feel they need it, right? Okay, so we got a lot of the main things in place. So let's now go to the cat. So the cat has got this kind of orange kind of quality. So just gonna clean a few brushes here. It's always a bad idea to clean your brushes on top of your painting, and then when you see the splashes leap out of the cup, you're like, oh, where's that? Where did that go? Okay. So let's take some warm yellow and warm red. Mix this together. That might be a little bit too dark. So let's just see what that looks like. Just squeeze a bit more paint out. So I'm going to paint the whole body this color. And then I'll have some kind of more reddish, orangey red stripes on top of it, as well as some hints of white as well afterwards. That's interesting. On camera, I don't know how it looks like on your computer screens or television screens at home. That looks very washed out, whereas in person this is a pretty electric orange. So maybe that's just my own television screen that I preview everything out on. I've never quite noticed the orange behaving like that on camera, but and you can see I just painted right over top of the eyes and all this stuff. The goal is just to get the painting covered with paint as quickly as possible. Is so weird. I swear it looks basically kind of like one of these colors right in between here. So whereas this looks almost like a sandy beachy color. Interesting. Okay. So really, now that we've got the painting covered, you know, this is the point in time where if you wanted, you could take a break and you could stop and finish the painting tomorrow. If you wanted to switch from acrylic to oil paints, this would be when you would do it. So I just got this big towel here, an old bathroom towel that I've washed, and then I tore up into a bunch of smaller towels that I can use to wipe my brushes on. This is handy here for me. I imagine if you're painting at your kitchen table, it's a little bit more difficult, but it certainly makes it easy for me just to quickly wash my brushes off. Okay, time to have a sip of tea. Oh, put a little eggnog in there. That is delicious. So, what do I want to do now? I think... So there's a lot of little details in this painting, like these tiny little rabbits and things. I don't know what these looks like, either little birds, or I'm not sure what some of those details are. Those are things that will come in later on. I think I want to do a little bit more with my warm, well, let's get a bit more cool green. I just want to get a little bit more up here done. Just a little bit more nuance. So taking my cool green and I'm going to keep getting it a little bit darker. Or not darker, just more saturated, sorry. Okay. Let's go back in the opposite direction with some of the warm green. You know what? I think I'm going to start painting with a smaller brush for some of this here now. there's going to be a little bit more nuance here eventually, but... Let's get all of these plants and leaves. Admittedly, I'm being a little bit. I am being not just. I'm being kind of lazy with the way that I'm painting these. I'm not, because I'm also just. There's going to be more work involved here, so I may be fine-tuning and touching up and. So I'm just aware of. I'm as much as it might be surprising to some of you, I am aware that time is flying, and so I'm always like, okay, let's just try to finish the painting. Maybe it won't be perfect. So what is the most important thing? Is it really this grass down here? Not really. So sometimes that means some parts of the painting aren't as well executed as others, but that's just me sort of making a calculated decision to kind of skip over some things. Same thing down here. So you just need to, you don't need to draw every little blade of grass. We just put in a little bit here and there, and it's convincing that there's grass. You can also see why I just sort of layer a bunch of that green to begin with, and it's all just kind of a bit of a mess. Because then it kind of just gives some of these details a little bit more punch. If they're all just painted on the same green, and everything would just look really, really flat. And while the flatness in and of itself is not a bad thing, right? Pretty much the whole history of art over the past couple 100 years is all about flatness, or at least according to some artists and historians. Clement Greenberg would certainly concur, or at least he would say that's what we should be striving towards. Not that I don't really agree with that, but okay. Let's just put little tiny brush strokes for, and even then this is pretty dark brown. I'm just going to add a little bit more yellow in there just so it's not so dark for some of these marks. You know, there's some of these blobs that didn't turn out the way I wanted. That's okay, I'll just cover them with a different color. Okay, that's pretty good. I'm going to take this, maybe I'll make it a little bit more of a, where can I do this? I'm just going to take this green, put a bit of glazing fluid on it. So it's a bit more transparent. To sort of darken under some of these birds. Okay. Good. An hour into the painting. This is where we are. That's pretty good. Makes me feel good. Donna says the pneumonia's gone and I'm feeling good. Wow, exciting. Deborah says, I have a Bengal cat. He has a bone deformity in his nasal cavity, so he has to take an inhaler every day. We love him. He is so gentle. I think that we will replace Wain's cat with our Hobbs. That's cool. That's cool. And also that you named your cat Hobbs, like Calvin and Hobbes, maybe? Is that where it comes from? I think that was probably my favorite, book as a kid growing up, is reading Calvin and Hobbes. I should do a Calvin and Hobbes painting. Wow, Don is wearing a halo. It's off until the end of January. It's going to be a long winter. No driving. Walking is... Oh my goodness. Well, we'll try to keep your spirits up here. I'm pleased that you're just able to join us right now. That makes me feel happy, and that you're able to have a little conversation with those other people in the chat. That's cool. And soon you'll be back to normal, I'm sure. Just want to... Come on. Okay. Paula says, please let us know that there will be 2 paintings so we can get the sketching ready. I'm done one only already. Yeah, here's the other one that I've begun already here for you. So yes, I'm going to do 2 of them. The second one will probably be going much faster, so you don't always have to paint them in real time, Paula. You can always do one and then do the other one at another time. Although I do always appreciate that you're here every single class with me. Let's see. I think what I want to do now is I want to paint the tree and just give it a bit more nuance, or all of the trees. And then probably when I've got that color, I'll probably do a little bit of the guitar, maybe a little spots on the birds. Then after that, I'll do all the pink in the trees, and then I might do like the yellow orange flowers. The other thing, I don't know about this creek. It's kind of got like a pinkish quality to it. I don't mind the blue, but maybe when I get to that point with the flowers here, I might decide to just maybe glaze over top of it with a little bit of color. I don't know. We'll see. See how when we get there. Okay, so as I said, let's do the tree. So I'm going to take this brown. Just get a bit more yellow in there. So this is just, again, to make a brown, or at least a warm brown. I took warm yellow, warm red, and warm blue. I think there's a bit of white in here as well. You probably want to just be careful not to adding too much white. And I'm actually just gonna glaze a little bit with this. Just put a little glazing fluid, a couple little drops, just makes it a bit more transparent. And I'm gonna go to my smaller brush here, and maybe I need a bit more warm yellow and a bit more white. So I'm not sure where the light's coming from in this painting. It's kind of all over the place. I don't know. So, because he's got some light coming from this side right here, but then we got light coming from... so, that is... I'm just going to... You know, if this was my own painting, I would really make a point of trying to clarify that kind of thing. So I'm just going to give, even though he's got shadowed really on the left side of the tree trunk, I'm going to put a bit of it on both sides. I'm just going to make a bit more of this and be mostly like a blue and red dominant brown, so it's getting much darker. Remember, we're not going to see much of these branches, so don't overthink it and don't spend too much time on it. And if you're unhappy with any part of it, then you just fill the tree up with flowers. Right, there's the flowers are sort of just, these branches are just gonna be sort of peeking in and out of the flowers, so okay. Let's do a little bit of this on this far tree, but we don't want to make it too dark. So now we're going to start coming down behind the cat here. Maybe I'll just zoom in just so you see how I'm doing this. I mean, I just sort of... I'm just really quickly applying paint there. Okay. I'm gonna go back to the lighter color. Okay. Let me think about these birds. Is there any quick stuff on the birds while I've got some of these lighter browns mixed up? Okay, we'll do a little bit more on them later. How about... let's do the bench. Or should we... that's... I almost feel like I want to do the bench and the guitar like wildly different colors than what we see here. There's just so much red and orange and brown. I'm tempted to do like a blue bench and a yellow guitar or something here. Gotta think about it for a minute here. While I do that, I'm just gonna pull back and wash this brush, or a couple brushes here. Wow, lots. Deborah says, yes, he is named after Calvin and Hobbes. It's our favorite comic, and all our kids read the comics at every breakfast. And my grandkids are calling, so I have to say goodnight. Thank you, Michael, for taking this on. I really appreciate this. Paula says, Donna, take the pneumonia vaccine. I got the same problem last year. It was not pleasant. Yikes. My goodness, yes. I didn't know there was a pneumonia vaccine. That's good news. That's cool. Modern medicine. Awesome. Let's get the I think I'm going to leave the guitar and the bench for a few moments, even though ideally it would be great to tackle those right now. I'm going to paint all of this pink up here and these kind of orangey yellow flowers, purple, like there's going to be all of a sudden a lot of color that's about to be introduced here. So I don't want to make any rash decisions to alter the painting from what it already is until these big areas of color, which are going to radically redefine the painting, are introduced here. So let's start with the pink. I'm going to start with a fairly light pink. So taking some red, mostly white. And even then, that's not bad. Maybe I'll just take a bit more white. You know what? I'm going to use a bit of a bigger brush too. And you know what? I'm just I see a bit of this is wet, so just to speed up the process, I'm going to use my hairdryer for the first time today. Sorry, I was just saying I got to make sure that the nanny just left for the day, so I want to make sure that I'm not missing anything, and our daughter's still in her bed. Okay, so now let's take this pink that we mixed, and I'm using a bigger brush, that way I can get these nice big spots really quickly. And you see what I mean about like this tree? You know, we're covering it with tons. Like almost the whole thing is going to be. So you can even just sort of look and go like, oh yeah, here's a spot where I wasn't happy with the tree branch. So I'm just going to, let's take care of that. I mean, I probably could have extended some of these. But you also want to keep some of the branches there. You don't want to just completely obliterate them, otherwise it sort of defeats the purpose of having painted them in the first place. going to take a bit more white. So for these flowers back here, making them almost exclusively white. Going back over. So I'm not, even though I'm using this white, I'm not going over every single instance where I painted the pink to begin with. Okay. Maybe that's good for right now. I'll let that dry. While that's drying, let's do some of this with some yellow and make an orange. Almost a peachy color here. Actually, I'm going to use that in the sky as well, but so you got to be patient, because otherwise you don't want to. I don't want to put too much white in any of these colors just yet, because it will dominate. Okay, I'm going to take a bit of this color I just put down here. I'm just going to put a few of them up here. Okay. And this one's just going to be white and yellow. And in fact, Woohoo! Excuse me. Change the angle a little bit here. There might be maybe just a few other ones poking out behind it. There we are. Remember I said, like, if there's parts, you know, that you want to paint out, you can just paint a few of these some spots on top of them later. Let's do a little more of this. This is essentially just painting with white, but it's slightly colored. And I can leave these like this or modify them as we go. Maybe I will take a bit of pink and just add it. Smaller, different kinds of flowers. He's got tons of little flowers everywhere. So we're not going to put all of them in, but I think, and some of this is going to get darker. Maybe I'll wait for that before I start putting those little flowers. maybe I'm going to take just a bit of cool blue and white. Just suggesting all these little plants that are growing everywhere in this kind of magical little landscape that he's creating here. Before I move on, I'm going to take some cool yellow just like right out of the tube. A bit of white in there. So I might have to go back and layer a little bit more yellow on those areas. Oh, you know what? I was going to do a bit of that. Sorry, yellow down here. Okay. Let's come up to the top of the painting now. And I'm going to start painting with some warm red and white. It's going to be a bit of a pink, but a little bit more saturated than these here. So take some of my warm red right out of the tube. And here's the pink I was painting with earlier. So I don't want it to be just pure warm red because that might be just too much. And I sort of do these in like little clusters of kind of 4 or 5. And you know, my goal is to try to get this done as quickly as possible. So you could really get caught in this area trying to make all of these little spots perfect. I think that's a trap. I think you want to just, I mean, you know, you could certainly make up your own mind, but for me, this looks, especially as the further I get from it, that looks great. Does it seem to fall apart when I get closer to it? Absolutely. Does every painting fall apart when you get up close to it? Almost every painting ever painted starts to look a little bit sloppy when you get up close to it. Do many of the greatest paintings of all time, when you get up close, do they kind of hold up? Some of them do, absolutely. And that's one of my favorite things about going to see art in person. And I'm always I'm that weird guy who always likes to get up really close to the paintings and makes the security guards nervous. Because I want to get up close and I want to see the painting in a way that I can't see on my computer screen at home. Right? Otherwise, what's the point? You know, if you're always just wandering around the museum and you're about as far away from the painting as you know, so it looks really small like on your phone, then you might as well just stay home and stay warm and dry and save your money. Like for me, the point of going to a museum and seeing the art is to actually get up close to it. That's what I want to see. I want to see what these things, I want to see that sloppiness. And I want to see how they were sloppy. So I'm going to almost do little dots on top of every one of these larger spots that I did. And maybe a few that are slightly outside. And there'll be a few that I sort of leave a little bit untouched so that it looks like there's you know, they're kind of a little bit out of focus or something, and so they're just kind of a big shape of color, not a more defined, so it suggests to people that they're a little bit further away. And you can see some of them are darker than others. As I'm going into my palette, I'm kind of just sometimes adding a little bit of white or a little bit more red back in there so that I'm constantly complicating this surface here, so it's not just one flat, uneven, or flat, even set of color. There's slight variations in all of these pinks. Let's take a bit more white, a bit more red. Right, so you see sometimes I just dip a little more in here, sometimes I dip a little more in there. And he did a lot of this, like, so you could see that he like, especially in this area, he just worked it by putting tons of these little spots, and that gives it this like sense of density, that there's a lot of flowers there. So we'll see. I'm gonna just sort of get what I have here accomplished, and then maybe I'll continue on there. I still also want to keep a few little areas where we see a bit of that blue coming through. That's important, because otherwise we want to still suggest that there's something in behind that tree, right? So little bits of blue serve that purpose. We don't need to have a lot of it, but just little things are really important. And then there is this tree in behind here, but I'm probably not going to do the little spots on the tree back there, just because we wouldn't really be able to see much detail, so I might just leave it like that. Okay. So now I'm just going to come up here and just thicken the density of here's a bit of just getting more and more to a the red out of the tube. I don't know if there'll be any solid red out of the tube, but we'll get pretty close. Okay, let's just take a look, because this is starting to take a lot of time getting all that in there. I'm going to take a little bit of red right out of the tube. I might actually have to wait for that to dry, in fact. So let's just come down here and see if there's any... I'm going to take some of this pink, a little bit, yeah, a bit of pink. Okay, let's take a look at this now. Should I do... I might do a tiny glaze with this pink here. Let's just see what this looks like. And if we don't like it, we can always get rid of it. Take our glazing fluid. Get a bit of pink on it. I don't mind that. It's just softens it up from the cool blue that was there. Yeah, I mean, it's fine. Now I can also go back and paint a little bit of the shore, because I was waiting to do that before I did some of that green. So I think I'm going to paint this guitar a bit more like a yellow, I think, now that I see how things are unfolding here. So I'm going to take a bit more cool. I painted a cool yellow and white. I take my... Actually, I think I was doing this right here. You can see I've painted a bunch of the details out there, which I'm sure is probably driving a few people nuts, but and I should have left this whole neck of the guitar alone, but it's okay, I think. Can I... So the bench here. I'm going to give it just a slight bluish, warm blue kind of quality. I'm going to take my warm... You know what? Maybe I'll make it a brown. So maybe I'll take this. Let's mix it into here. Let's see. Maybe this will be a bad choice. We'll see. Sure, but we'll let that sit for a few moments. While that's sitting, I'm gonna get my warm green here again. And I'm just gonna do some grass overlapping the water over here in the background. And same thing, just some very subtle grass. Back here. Let's get a slightly darker green. Okay. Let's take this a bit more of a bluish color. Do I put that on the top or the sides? dark color. Which is a different Okay, I need to touch that up, but I'll let it dry because I'm just now pushing a bunch of paint around. Let's go back to the guitar. Okay. So I think I do want to get this guitar a little bit closer to being done. Let's take. I'm gonna mix a kind of a brown again. Okay, let's go give this some volume here. Now I can't, I've long ago sort of covered up my lines. So I'm just sort of eyeballing it. Which is not always the best thing. Sometimes later on I look at it and go, ooh. So I'll put the strings in later. This is not quite done, but oops, let's go. Okay. Oh, my legs getting sore here. I think now let's move on to the cat finally. And so there's Lolly checking in saying hello. Hi, Lolly. Let's see here. How red should we actually make that cat? That's the question. First world problems over here. Well, let's just start, and then we'll just see how things develop. So let's take some warm yellow. warm red, mix that together to make an orange. So it's a darker orange than we put down there about 20 minutes ago. Oh, I just got paint on my nose. Paul says, "Look for a high chair. It might help." I do have a chair that can get like this high, right over there. But when I'm painting, I like to stand up. So it's just I do a lot of sitting and drawing on my tablet. So when I'm painting, I want to be upright. I'm just thinking about adding a little bit of, before I launch in with this color, I'm going to mix a slightly more yellow version and glaze with it. Maybe, actually, I'm going to take some white and add this into the glaze. So my goal here is just to kind of give a little variation under here, a little volume. Very subtle. Okay. Let's go in here. Where should we begin? Maybe let's work face first here. That'll probably satisfy some people who are wondering if we were ever going to get to this part of the painting. Okay. I am gonna go in here and add some white eventually. Speaking of which, Look how he left the background color, that green, in through those eyes. That is interesting. I'm going to take basically a very light pink. I'm just going to paint. It's going to look a little creepy. I'm going to paint that there. I'll let that dry while I go around the rest of the face here. As I look at this, I see... Well, should we do any of the... Well, maybe I'll do the white afterwards. I was thinking about maybe stopping and doing all of the white now. But I think I'm just going to proceed. I do have a much smaller brush, so just to make my life a little bit easier, I'm going to use that. So he's kind of doing some outlining with the darker color. Just get all of this in, and then I'm going to come back and really refine everything. Oops, can't even see what I'm doing, can you? Almost done all of this. Just a few more minutes of it, and then we'll do the, we'll kind of complicate it with a bit of white. So you see, sometimes it kind of clumps up. That drives me crazy, so I just wipe it off and then start again. Okay. So now let's just take some white. In fact, just in the interest of speeding things up, I'm just going to go... In fact, let's just mix this right here. Starting to come along, hey? Okay, let's get let's get these fingers a little higher on here. We're making good progress here. More and more people joining the stream. That's awesome to see. I know this is an unusual time. I don't usually do in the middle of a weekday, but that might also give people from around the world a little bit of an opportunity to tune in rather than having to watch the recorded version. So I wonder who's painting today's painting with me, or who will eventually end up making this painting. I never know what is going to happen until we get close to the feedback episodes. I start going through and finding all of the images. Like, oh, that's interesting that so many people decided to paint this painting or that painting. Oh, I forgot the tail, didn't I? Okay. To touch this hand up. Okay, now I also am going to get a little bit more white on here. And just come back again onto the face. just made a little, I'm noticing some tiny well, I guess maybe small mistakes, but I want to clear up there. Let's come back with this color and redefine these eye shapes. Man, as this video's going on, I'm like, the idea of starting a whole new painting after this. I'm not sure how I feel about that. So let's now take some of this darker color that we made at the near the very beginning. I'm going to put this here and mix. It's a bit more of a bluey kind of brownish color. It's pretty extreme, but it's not too bad. Looks like this needs to be blow dried because it's still wet, so I'll do that. I see you guys are having quite the conversation there in the chat. Okay. Although, you know, I think I am going to... Where on earth did that come from? Take my yellow and mix this into this color. You get a little bit more of a black again. Oops. It was a little on the bluish side. Now that's much more of a neutral color. There we go. Let's get some whiskers in here. I think I'm just gonna do maybe 3 on each side. 3 or we'll see. And he did those whiskers like very subtly, right? Barely visible. I've kind of made mine a bit darker. little subtle darkening here. I think I will glaze a little bit underneath the guitar, etc., an armpit. Save that as a glaze. I'm going to paint the guitar a little bit more. So I'm taking my darkest color. Just doing a bit outlining here. So I'll wait for that to dry. Just had to add a little bit of white in there to get that. Let's try to do a few strings on this guitar. You know what? I'm going to use a Posca pen for this. It'll just make my life a lot easier. So I'm going to blow dry all of that. Yeah, I'm going to use a Posca pen since it's just going to make my life a little bit easier to... Where's my outline? To do these outlines. My eyes are starting to get a bit crossed here, so... I see people talking about being slow painters and not being able to keep up, and you know, go at your own pace. You know, part of me, sometimes I go slower and sometimes I go faster. I often sometimes pick up the pace a little bit because I just know that the episode's dragging on. I think like, oh my goodness, I want to try to finish it so it doesn't look like it's a 12-hour episode or something. I'm going to make a brown again. There's a clump of something in there. And I'm just going to interesting here. Do this next part. Let's take a bit of white and brown. I'm going to take some white and just put A little reflection in these eyes. My cat seems to be looking a little bit away. You know, I'm getting pretty close. I think I want to just do a little bit more work on this bench. And again, obviously I took a little bit of liberties here. Maybe the best thing is actually just to start doing a bit of glazing. Maybe I'm going to glaze with this brown. Where did I mix this brown? Yeah. Let's take some glazing fluid on the brown. I'm just gonna That's very subtle. I'm not even sure how much that shows up on camera. Let's take a bit, make it darker. Oops, you can't see what I'm doing again. Okay, how about let's zoom out. Yeah, I don't think I just won't have the time today to do the other painting as I had hoped, so I'll try to do that. Maybe I'll do a late night one tonight, we'll see. Darker under here. I have to go teach this evening in person, so I guess still got to get ready for my class and all that kind of stuff. So. Let's do this bench. Take our darkest color, glaze with it. Now I'm just going to take my dark color, do a little bit of outlining here, which is kind of a cheap way of getting some structure. What else needs to be done here before I can go about my business? Take some white and yellow. give a few of them a bit of a... This one's got a bit of an orangey. This one is very dark. Paula says you should sell some of your paintings in some art show. I do that, Paula. I exhibit art around the world and had exhibitions in a dozen or so countries. I haven't had one recently just because I'm working on my graphic novel, but one of these days. It's just, since I'm focusing on all these little details down here in the birds. I'm going to take my tiny brush. Let's do a few legs. It's a little out of focus, isn't it? Okay, I think I might have to just call it a day here. Yeah, ooh, I gotta get going. Okay, so let's, gosh, I didn't think I'd be spending all this time so long working on this painting, but I was hoping to get 2 done in this period of time. It is the 26th, yeah. So there is the other one, which I have yet to really begin. this one here. Maybe I'll do a midnight episode tonight. I don't know. We'll see. I'll have to think about it. Let's see how much energy I have after I get home from teaching tonight. Okay. That was a... You know, it took a while to do. There's a lot of little details in here. I was thinking about trying to do this one faster. But I got a little bit into the details, and probably there's certain people who probably think even then it's a little bit sloppy, but hey, you can only do so much, right? Okay, everyone, enjoy the rest of your evening. It's Black Friday tonight, so maybe you've already done a little bit of shopping or something like that. If you haven't and you want to put your money towards something helpful and useful, consider leaving a donation to this video. There's a PayPal link in the description below, or you could do an e-transfer by contacting me through my website or through the Facebook group. The links are down below for both of those. There's also the super chat here on YouTube. You could also just subscribe to the channel, leave a comment on this video or any other videos. All those comments help the YouTube algorithms do their thing. So, and you know, letting an ad here and there roll while you're before one of the episodes. Anyway, thank you everyone for joining me. I'm going to do that other painting. When I do it, not quite sure. On Monday, for Cyber Monday, it also happens to be Daredevil Day. Daredevil is my favorite superhero when I was growing up, and we'll talk all about that on Monday evening. And then on Tuesday, we're making a painting by Jean-Michel Basquiat. I think we're going to do two. And that one, I know, those are, I think, might hopefully, knock on wood, go a little bit faster. So everyone, enjoy the rest of your evening. We'll see you guys maybe tonight? I don't know. We'll talk to you guys soon, okay? Yeah. My brain is melted. So we'll see you guys. Good night, everybody.